Have you ever wondered why we keep repeating certain mistakes? Why the struggles we face today were already experienced countless times by our ancestors thousands of years ago? What if I told you that most of what you perceive about the world is merely the echo of history and the inertia of long-held illusions? We live in an era of information overload, constantly striving to learn and keep up. But have you noticed how those true underlying logics, those insights that allow you to see through society and understand human nature, always seem so obscure and hard to grasp? Do you crave a perspective that lets you instantly discern the fundamental workings of the world, enabling you to make wiser decisions in your work, relationships, and even personal growth, avoiding unnecessary detours? It's like fumbling through a fog, filled with uncertainty. You're trying to move forward, yet constantly tripped up by invisible obstacles, and the common sense and experience you thought you possessed feels so inadequate at crucial moments. You yearn for efficiency, for breakthroughs, for a genuine understanding of how this world operates, rather than being misled by superficial appearances. You desire deeper insight with every choice you make, to make judgments that are more advantageous to you. You're tired of fragmented information and long for systemic and profound cognitive enhancement. But rest assured, in the next 15 minutes, we will together dismantle a powerful thinking tool that will completely transform your view of history and the world. It will also give you a set of immediately actionable solutions, allowing you to find your clear path through the mists of history and even reshape your mental model so that on your future journey, you can proceed step by step, anticipating opportunities. And this powerful, game-changing tool is hidden within a classic work hailed as the decoder of European civilization that will revolutionize your worldview, Why the West Rules for Now. The Patterns of History, and What They Reveal About the Future, or in Chinese, A Little History of Europe You're Sure to Love. The author of this book is the renowned historian John Hirst, known for his ability to simplify complex topics and make them accessible. He doesn't just list historical facts, more importantly, he reveals the deep-seated operating logic and fundamental principles behind European history, giving you a comprehensive grasp of the essence of European civilization in the shortest possible time. He acts like a guide, taking you through time to capture the profound forces that continue to influence us today. Many people find European history long and confusing, filled with countless dynasties, wars, and evolving ideas. From the philosophical debates of ancient Greece to the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, from the Dark Ages to the dawn of the Renaissance, from the turmoil of the Reformation to the rational brilliance of the Enlightenment, and then the devastation of 2 world wars, leading up to the formation of today's European Union. This timeline is too lengthy, too complex, packed with infinite details and branches, making it daunting and hard to know where to begin. But John Hirst reveals a surprising secret. The true core of European civilization was shaped by 3 seemingly independent yet intricately intertwined forces. They are like 3 powerful historical currents, stirring and merging, ultimately converging to form the European civilization we see today. These 3 forces are the classical civilization of Greece and Rome, Christian faith, and the martial spirit and tribal traditions of the Germanic barbarians. These 3 forces are like 3 DNA strands, intertwined, shaping Europe's unique character and evolutionary trajectory, imbuing it with unparalleled vitality and inner tension. Let's look at a classic case to understand how these 3 forces interacted. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe entered a period historians called the Dark Ages. This term sounds negative, as if civilization utterly collapsed and everything descended into chaos. But this darkness was not without merit. It was more like a civilization's incubation period, laying the groundwork for the birth of modern Europe. In this seemingly chaotic era, the 3 DNA strands that shaped European civilization were undergoing their most profound recombination and integration. First, the legacy of classical Roman civilization. Although the Western Roman Empire collapsed, its shadow never completely vanished. What did Rome leave behind? It left a highly developed concept of law and order. While the Roman legal code no longer unified the entire continent, it remained a crucial model and source of ideas for subsequent legal development. It left an advanced administrative system. Although central authority disintegrated, the concept of local administrative units and the rudimentary forms of certain bureaucratic bodies were inherited and imitated. It also left behind remarkable engineering techniques, those magnificent aqueducts, roads, and buildings, even in ruins, silently reminded future generations of past glory and inspired subsequent architectural and engineering practices. Rome's language, Latin, became the universal language of academia and religion, carrying the torch of knowledge. This was like a vast library of knowledge and technical heritage. Though covered in dust, its value was never completely erased. Second, Christian faith. Amidst the chaos of the Roman Empire's decline, Christianity, with its universal love, promise of salvation, and rigorous organizational structure, quickly filled the spiritual vacuum. When secular order collapsed, the Church became the only force in European society capable of providing a unifying spiritual solace and moral code. The Church was not merely a religious institution, it also owned land, wealth, educational institutions, and in some regions, even assumed administrative functions. Monasteries became havens for knowledge and culture, where scribes tirelessly copied and preserved ancient texts, ensuring the survival of the classical civilization's flame. Christianity not only offered spiritual comfort but also, through its doctrines, shaped Europeans' worldview, values, and ethics. It emphasized original sin, salvation, and the afterlife, guiding people to focus on spiritual elevation, while also stressing the concepts of fellowship and community, providing a foundation for social cohesion. Finally, the Germanic barbarians, full of primitive vitality and strong life force. Their incursions into the Roman Empire's territory brought destruction, but also new blood and different cultural genes. These tribal peoples, though called barbarians by the Romans, were not entirely uncivilized. They had their own tribal traditions, unique legal customs, and a strong desire for personal freedom and martial spirit. They championed heroism, personal honor, and emphasized kinship and loyalty. When they collided with the Roman legacy and Christian faith, a miraculous chemical reaction occurred. Their tribal chiefs gradually evolved into kings, and their military strength became the foundation for establishing new kingdoms. Their land tenure, combined with Roman land systems and Christian parish divisions, eventually merged to form the cornerstone of Europe's unique feudal system. This system, unlike the unified imperial model of the East, emphasized decentralized power and a contractual relationship between lords and vassals. Europe's unique characteristic is that, unlike China, which achieved unification through strong central authority, these three forces competed, checked each other, and ultimately formed a diversified, tension-filled model of civilization. This tension was not just evident in power struggles but permeated every aspect of thought, culture, and social structure. It was precisely this inherent tension that propelled European civilization to constantly self-reflect, self-correct, and ultimately give birth to the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Enlightenment, and even the modern scientific revolution, achieving innovation and self-renewal again and again. This tension is the inherent driving force behind Europe's continuous innovation and self-renewal. This is so important. Understanding this trinity helps you comprehend why Europeans both revere reason and science and adhere to faith, why they hold grand imperial dreams, yet cherish personal freedom, why their social structure is decentralized and diverse, rather than centrally controlled and monolithic. Once you grasp this underlying structure, when you look at today's global landscape, the dynamics of international relations, or even the differences in cultural customs between nations, you'll find that many phenomena have historical roots. They are no longer isolated events but the inevitable result of the interweaving, collision, and fusion of these three forces throughout history. So, the next time you see a national policy or a social phenomenon, ask yourself, is there a historical shadow behind this? Which traditional forces are at play? Is classical reason at work, or is it Christian morality influencing, or perhaps some Germanic impulse for freedom driving it? This way of thinking will instantly elevate the depth and breadth of your perspective, allowing you to not only see, but also understand why, leading to wiser judgments and decisions. It enables you to find clear threads and underlying logic in a complex world. Another main thread in European history, and key to understanding the deep structure of European civilization, is the eternal struggle between religious and secular power. This is extremely rare in other civilizations. Unlike Eastern civilizations where the divine right of kings was unified early on, with emperors serving as both the supreme secular rulers and often seen as representatives of heaven, divine and monarchical power were highly integrated. In Europe, however, the situation was fundamentally different. The Pope and the Emperor, spiritual and material, faith and secular governance, were constantly in a delicate balance and opposition, mutually checking and complementing each other, forming a unique dual power structure. This struggle was by no means a simple life or death battle, but a complex millennium-long game of chess that profoundly shaped Europe's political system, legal framework, and even the formation of civil society. The most classic example is the Walk to Canossa in the 11th century. This was not just a political event but a symbolic peak in the struggle between spiritual and secular power. The protagonists of the story are Henry IV, Holy Roman Emperor, and Pope Gregory VII. Their conflict centered on the investiture controversy, simply put, who had the right to appoint bishops of the Church, the Emperor or the Pope. This might seem like just a matter of personnel appointment, but behind it lay the secular monarch's coveting of church property, armies, and immense influence, and the Pope's defense of the Church's independence and supreme spiritual authority. Gregory VII insisted that the Pope held ultimate power, even to depose emperors. Henry IV, of course, disagreed and attempted to challenge the Pope's authority, even convening a synod to declare the Pope deposed. The result? Pope Gregory VII responded with thunderous swiftness. He excommunicated Henry IV. In that era, what did excommunication mean? It meant you were no longer a Christian, your subjects could refuse to pledge allegiance to you, your allies could morally betray you, and even your soul would be damned to hell. This was a more terrifying blow than military defeat. Henry IV soon found his nobles stirring, and his empire facing the danger of disintegration. Ultimately, he had to submit. In the bitter winter of 1077, Henry IV, in extremely cold weather, barefoot and dressed in sackcloth and ashes, like a penitent sinner, knelt outside Canossa Castle for 3 days and 3 nights, only then obtaining the Pope's forgiveness and readmission to the Church. What was this? It was the ultimate suppression of secular power by spiritual power. This scene was enshrined in history as a landmark event where ecclesiastical authority triumphed over imperial power. But this tug-of-war did not end with the complete victory of one side. On the contrary, this ongoing checks and balances compelled both parties to continuously develop their theoretical systems and consolidate their power bases. The Church needed to train more theologians to expound doctrine and defend ecclesiastical authority, leading to the rise of universities, which were often initially affiliated with the Church. Kings also needed to train their own jurists to study Roman law and develop secular laws to counter canon law and strengthen their own legitimacy to rule. The existence of this dual system prevented either side from establishing absolute despotism, keeping power constantly dispersed and balanced. This balance was precisely the breeding ground for ideas of freedom and democracy, because it provided individuals and different groups with space to choose and seek refuge. Do you see? Isn't this the genesis of modern society's separation of powers idea? It practiced the division of power on European soil much earlier than any theorist. When power is divided, when no single institution can act with impunity, personal freedom and civil rights have room to grow. If papal power grew too great, the emperor would check it. If imperial power grew too great, the Church would intervene. This mutual restraint, though sometimes leading to conflict and chaos, prevented any form of absolute despotism from taking deep root in continental Europe in the long run. It forced rulers to consider the existence and potential response of the other party when exercising power. So, when you enjoy modern political achievements like freedom of speech, judicial independence, and the separation of powers today, you should thank this power struggle that lasted for over 1,000 years. Understanding this will make you realize why the separation of powers is so crucial, and why we must be vigilant against any form of concentrated power, whether political, economic, or media power. This concerns not only national governance but also each of our lives, and even your company's organizational structure, and your relationships with your partner or colleagues. In a healthy system, decentralized power means more possibilities, more innovation, and more effective protection of individual rights. It teaches us that true security does not come from a single, powerful authority but from diverse, mutually restraining forces. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of European civilization is how it gradually nurtured the personal freedom, rule of law, and rational thinking that we cherish today. This did not happen overnight, nor was it the result of some top-down design. Rather, it was forged through countless explorations, conflicts, and even bloodshed and sacrifice over a long historical process. This journey was full of chance, repetition, and hardship, yet its outcome was profound and far-reaching. Let us look at a phenomenon often overlooked but crucially important: the medieval urban autonomy movement. This is a living example of the budding spirit of liberty on European soil. Under the widespread feudal manor system, serfs were tied to the land, dependent on their lords, with little personal freedom and often miserable living conditions. But after 1000 AD, as European agricultural productivity improved, populations grew, and trade gradually revived, some strategically located and commercially active cities began to emerge. Merchants, artisans, and free citizens gathered there. They no longer depended on land but made a living through trade and craftsmanship. These newly rising urban classes, to protect their commercial interests and to escape arbitrary exploitation and interference from feudal lords, began to strive for autonomy. Initially, it might have just been to gain certain tax exemptions or the right to operate independently in the market. But as their economic strength and organizational capabilities grew, they began to seek broader political rights, such as having their own mayor, city council, independent judicial system, and even their own city walls and militia. Through redemption buying charters from lords with money or collective arms struggle, they established free cities with their own laws, courts, and town halls. These cities were like independent republics, although they might nominally still recognize the suzerainty of a king or lord. In practice, they possessed a high degree of autonomy internally. These cities became breeding grounds for free thought and the growth of the civic class. Here, the spirit of individual contract was valued because commercial activity required trust and rules. Here, the equality of law gradually emerged because residents within the city-state, regardless of wealth, had to obey the same urban regulations. Here, citizens managed public affairs through elections or negotiations, fostering early democratic practices. This happened decades or even centuries earlier than the Magna Carta, a practice of freedom occurring at a more grassroots and widespread level. They nurtured the modern commercial spirit and the yearning for rights and freedom, forming a new social structure different from the rural feudal system. It was this power, emerging from the grassroots, that eventually converged on a larger scale, driving the 14th century Renaissance's affirmation of human nature and praise of secular life, as well as the 18th century Enlightenment's embrace of reason and science, laying the foundation for modern society. Do you see? Freedom is never a handout from heaven. It's not something conceived by a philosopher out of thin air and then bestowed from above by rulers. It is earned through every struggle, every compromise, and even every instance of bloodshed and sacrifice. This book tells us that true freedom is not unbridled anarchy, but rights established on order and rules, achieved through contracts and negotiation. Europe's spirit of the rule of law and contract comes precisely from these autonomous cities' practice of law, from the struggles for the separation of powers, and from the protection of individual property rights. These are the deep roots of Western society's institutions and ideas. So, when you face injustice at work or difficulties in life, this book will give you strength. It tells you that the individual's struggle for rights and a better life is an impulse ingrained in human DNA and the fundamental driving force of social progress. When you understand this, you will find that every effort you make, whether it's fighting for fairer working conditions, defending your legitimate rights, or advocating for equal dialogue in your family and community, is adding bricks to a broader space of freedom. You are no longer a bystander of history, you are a participant in history. Every choice you make shapes your own micro-history and influences the society around you. This realization will bring you powerful inner strength, allowing you to be more resolute and courageous when facing challenges because you know that your efforts have historical resonance, and you are continuing humanity's great pursuit of progress. So, friends, today in just 15 minutes we have drawn powerful insights from a little history of Europe you're sure to love to change your way of thinking. Now, please remember these 3 things and immediately put them into practice in your life, letting this historical wisdom truly serve you. First, learn the layered historical deconstruction method. No matter what social phenomenon, policy decision, or workplace problem you encounter, don't just look at the surface, and certainly don't let immediate emotions sway you. Try to consider which historical forces are interweaving and contending behind it. Is classical rational logic dominating? Is some deep-seated moral or religious belief influencing it? Or is it the desire for freedom and power from different individuals or groups driving it? This multi-dimensional thinking, which penetrates beyond appearances, will allow you to quickly grasp the essence of the problem. Second, apply the principle of checks and balances. Apply this thinking model to your daily life. In your team, company, or even family relationships, examine whether power is too concentrated. Is there some form of absolute authority? How can you foster more creativity, protect individual rights, and avoid potential risks and conflicts through reasonable checks, such as establishing clear rules, distributing responsibilities, introducing multi-party oversight, and encouraging diverse voices? Remember, dispersed power brings true vitality and health. Third, be a pioneer of freedom. Never give up the pursuit of personal freedom, higher values, and a more reasonable order. Whether it's your freedom of thought, freedom of choice, or fighting for fairer rights for yourself and others, this is the fundamental driving force of human civilization's progress. Every independent thought, every courageous voice, every questioning of unreasonable phenomena from you is continuing the freedom gene nurtured by European civilization. Because it is this pursuit that has driven every leap in human civilization and will surely guide you to live your own remarkable life. Ultimately, what this book teaches us is not just the history of Europe, but a fundamental way of thinking that allows us to see through the essence of things and understand the complexity of human civilization. It reveals that everything we enjoy today, be it freedom, the rule of law, rationality, science, or innovation, did not appear out of thin air, nor should it be taken for granted. Instead, it is the crystallization of countless generations' arduous exploration, bloody struggle, continuous trial and error, and adjustment. When we understand the past, when we see those past darknesses and lights, those repeated struggles and compromises, we can better grasp the present and foresee the future. History is not a cold record, it is the most precious mentor in our lives, a lighthouse that illuminates the path ahead, guiding us through the fog towards enlightenment, becoming a wiser, more powerful person. Now, I have a question for you. Of the three underlying logics of European history mentioned in the book Greco-Roman Heritage, Christianity, and Germanic Barbarians, which do you think has had the most profound impact on modern society? Why? Or, based on your own life experience, which kind of power balance wisdom has been most insightful for you? Share your thoughts and stories in the comment section below. I'll be there to discuss with all of you. I look forward to your insights. If you also wish to continuously elevate your understanding and grasp the underlying logic of this complex world, if you crave to master more such thinking tools to empower your life with more possibilities, then be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future deep dive content that can upgrade your cognition. See you in the next video. I look forward to meeting you again and exploring the boundaries of knowledge together.